Good day, students. How are you? Today consider the next topic named two variable function. Two variable functions. Two variable functions. Functions. И назовитесь iki değişenli funksiya, in Russian funksiya с двумя переменными. The general form of two variable function is following: z equals f of x, y. This is the general form of the two variable function. Here x and y are independent variables, and z here function. While the graph of one variable function y equals f of x is some curved line in the plane, then the graph of the two variable function is some surface in the coordinate space. This function has partial derivatives. Partial derivatives in Azeri it is hususi töreme. In Russian it is частное производное. If take the partial derivative with respect to x, for example, then we must consider y is a constant value, and the first partial derivative with respect to x is denoted in the following form: z prime on x or dz over dx. It is notation of partial derivative of first order partial derivative with respect to x. Here y is considered a constant value. But if take the partial derivative with respect to y, then in this case x is considered a constant value. And notation of first partial derivative with respect to y is denoted in the following form: z prime with respect to y, or it is dz is dy. It is notation of first order partial derivative. For example, find the partial derivatives of the function. Find the partial derivatives. The first partial derivatives. The function f of x, y is sine x over y. It is two variable function. Solution. Here this function is the composite function because argument isn't simply x. First find first partial derivative. Prime with respect to x. It is composite function if substitute y instead of x, denote x over y as by changed by u, then we will have sine t, t prime with respect to x. Here x over y is t. Then it is equal to cosine t multiplied by t prime with respect to x. Cosine t is cosine of x over y multiplied by x over y prime with respect to x. If we take the partial derivative with respect to x, we must then consider y constant value. Therefore, y over 1 over y is constant factor, and it can be taken out of the derivative symbol. Then equals cosine of x over y multiplied by 1 over y multiplied by x prime with respect to x. But x prime with respect to x is unit, is 1. And therefore we'll obtain 1 over y multiplied by cosine of x over y. Then find the first partial derivative with respect to y. F prime with respect to y equals sine of x over y prime with respect to y. Here again change x over y by t, and then we obtain the composite function sine t prime with respect to y. It is cosine t multiplied by t prime with respect to y. Then it is cosine x over y multiplied by x over y prime with respect to y. If take the partial derivative with respect to y, then consider x constant value. Therefore, here x is constant value, and it is taken out of the derivative symbol. Then we'll have cosine x over y multiplied by x multiplied by 1 over y prime with respect to y. And it is ordinary derivative, and derivative 1 over y with respect to y is minus 1 over y squared. Cosine of x over y multiplied by x multiplied by minus 1 over y squared, and finally we have minus x over y squared multiplied by cosine x over y. This expression is first partial derivative with respect to x, and it is first partial derivative with respect to y. Then consider second partial derivative. Two variable function has four different second partial derivatives. Right, second partial derivatives. Назаритесь ikinci tertip hususi teoremeler. In Russian, частные производные второго порядка. Partial. In Azeri it is hususi teoremeler. In Russian, частные производные. Second order partial derivative has four following forms. First form, pure partial derivative with respect to x. Z2 prime z2 prime with respect to x. It is partial derivative with respect of x of partial derivative with respect to x. Z prime on x, prime on x, or also d squared. It is read as d squared z over d x squared. It is d dx of dz dx. Then consider the mixed partial derivative with respect to xy. Z2 prime xy. It is derivative, partial derivative with respect to y of partial derivative with respect to x. Or d squared z dx dy. It is d over dy of dz over dx. First, the partial derivative with respect to x is taken. Then partial derivative with respect to y is taken. Then third type of second order partial derivative, z2 prime yx is equal to z prime with respect to x prime with respect to y with respect to x, or d squared z dy dx. It is partial derivative with respect to x of partial derivative with respect to y. Here first the partial derivative with respect to y is taken, then the partial derivative with respect to x is taken. And finally, the last type of second order partial derivative, second partial derivative with respect to y. Z prime with respect to y, prime with respect to y, or d squared z over dy squared equals d over dy of dz over dy. The second order partial derivatives of first and fourth types are named the pure partial derivatives, but second order partial derivatives of second and third type are named the mixed partial derivatives. And if the mixed partial derivatives, second order partial derivatives are the continuous function, then these derivatives are identical ones. Continuous function, in other it is kesilmez funksiya, in Russian непрерывная функция. Continuous function. Continuous function. In other it is kesilmez funksiya, in Russian непрерывная функция. If the mixed partial derivatives are the continuous function, then these derivatives are identical ones. Now go to the next topic, named the extremum of two-variable function. The extremum points of two-variable function. Variable function. First, consider the necessary conditions. Necessary condition nazarı it is zaruri şartlar ve gerekli şartlar. Lazım şartlar. For the extremum points existence, all first order partial derivatives must be equal to zero. That is z prime with respect to x is zero, and z prime with respect to y is zero. They are the necessary conditions. And the root of this system of conditions are named the critical points. Then write the sufficient conditions. The sufficient condition nazarı it is kafi şartlar, yeterli şartlar. In Russian, достаточные условия. Here, the characteristic determinant of second order is constructed. Delta equals z2 prime with respect to x, z2 prime with respect to x, y, z prime with respect to y, x, and z2 prime with respect to y, y. This determinant is named the characteristic determinant. Characteristic назарı it is characteristic determinant, in Russian характеристический определитель. Characteristic determinant. Here we have three conditions. If delta is positive, then the given function has the extreme points. Has the extreme points. Extreme points. Here we must have the value of characteristic determinant at critical points. But if also z2 prime with respect to x is positive, then minimum point. If z2 prime with respect to x is negative, then maximum point. Also, you know that the maximum function is the value function at maximum point, and minimum of function or minimum value function is the value function at the minimum point. Second point, if delta is negative, then function has no extreme point. Then has no extreme points. Extreme points. And third, if delta is 0, then we have the indeterminate case. Indeterminate case. Then consider the next two-variable function and find its possible extreme points. Consider the next example. Find the possible extreme points. Of the two-variable function. Z equals x squared minus xy plus y squared plus 9x minus 6y plus 20. X squared minus xy plus y squared plus 9x minus 6y plus 20. Solution. First find the first order partial derivatives, and then equalize this derivative to 0 and solve the obtained equation system of equations, and thereby find the critical points. First Roman point. z prime with respect to x, here 2x minus y, which is 0 plus 9. Plus 9, they are also zeros. Then find the another partial, first order partial derivative with respect to y. Derivative of this expression with respect to y is 0 because this term doesn't depend on y. Then here x is a constant factor, minus x, plus derivative of y squared with respect to y is 2y. 2y, 0 minus 6 is equal to 0. So this obtained system. Find y from the first equation and then substitute its expression instead of y in the second equation. Y equals 2x plus 9 and then substitute this expression instead of y in the second equation. Minus x plus 2 multiplied by 2x plus 9 minus 6 is equal to 0. Then minus x plus 4x plus 18 minus 6 is 0. 3x plus 12 is 0. 3x is minus 12, x is minus 4. Minus 4. Then find y. For finding y, substitute minus 4 instead of x. Y equals 2 multiplied by minus 4 plus 9 is unit. That is, y is unit. Therefore, we have only unique critical point. Minus 4, y is the critical point. Then continue, find the second order partial derivatives. And then calculate this partial derivative at the point minus 4, 1. At the point minus 4, 1. That 2 prime of x is equal to derivative of this expression of this function with respect to x is simply 2. Then z2 prime x y, then derivative of this expression with respect to y is minus 1. Then find the derivative, second order partial derivative with respect to yx. Then find derivative of this function with respect to x, which is minus 1. And finally find the derivative of second order partial derivative with respect to y. Y is equal to derivative of this expression with respect to y is 2. Then continue. Then form the characteristic determinant delta. Delta equals z2 prime xx, z2 prime xy, z2 prime yx, z prime, yy. Substitute their values. 2 minus 1, 2 minus 1, minus 1, 2, minus 1, 2. Then calculate the obtained determinant is 4 minus 1 is 3 is positive. It means our function, the given function, has extreme point. It means the given function has the extreme point. Has the extreme point. Extreme point. Then extreme point. Then look at the second order partial derivative with respect to xx. It is 2, and 2 is positive. Z2 prime xx is equal to is positive. It means the critical point is the minimum point. It means the critical point is the minimum point. The minimum point. That is our critical point, minus 4, 1. The point minus 4, 1 is the minimum point. The minimum point. That is x, y minimum is minus 4, 1. Then calculate the minimum itself, minimum of function. For this, substitute this point into the expression of z. Z minimum is equal to f of x minimum, y minimum. That is f of minus 4, 1. It means we must substitute minus 4 instead of x and 1 instead of y. Equals minus 4 squared minus 4 multiplied by 1 plus 1 squared plus 9 multiplied by minus 4 minus 6 multiplied by 1 plus 20 equals 16 plus 4 plus 1 minus 36 minus 6 plus 20. Then it is 41. It is it is 21, 41 minus 42 is minus 1. That is minimum of this function is minus 1. Z minimum is minus 1. Minus 1. Finally, rewrite your homework. Find the possible extreme point of the two-variable function. Z equals 3x plus 6y minus x squared minus xy minus y squared. Our video lesson ended, dear students. It is our the last video lesson, final video lesson, and good luck and goodbye, students.